when Luke goes to swing at Palpatine, Vader stops him. And a lot of people think that was Vader protecting Palpatine, but the way that it was written, what it was supposed to be is him protecting Luke from making that decision.
Welcome. This is A Lost Plot, the podcast where cinematic plots are taken apart piece by piece to determine what makes that movie great or why it has been forgotten today.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot. I'm your host, Maverick, here with our guest, Andrew. This guy. All right, today we are reviewing an absolute
classic
addition to the to the Star Wars franchise. Today we are discussing Episode 6 of Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. So that is
Jedi.
We'll get into the details in just a minute, but actually, I don't even remember when this was released. I forgot to write that down. My bad. It stars Carrie Fisher
Maverick,
and Han Solo, and I know.
It doesn't star Han Solo. It stars Harrison Ford. Genius.
I know. I said that on purpose, you nerd. Released May 25th, 1983. That you get the day and everything for you guys who were waiting for that so long. We don't care about the rest.
Are you asking me?
This is an old movie with old people at this point, but it's still around for a reason. So let's talk about why.
Well, yeah, it's around because it was made a long time ago, so it's still here. Anyways, what's it about? I'm glad you asked. Okay. This is the movie where you get Princess Leia in a gold bikini, a big fat slug of a drug lord. Luke Skywalker comes back in black with a green lightsaber, chops up the slug lord. Boba Fett dies. Darth Vader dies. Emperor Palpatine dies. Lots of stormtroopers die.
Did he though?
Oh yeah, that's right. We got that dumb TV show. Whatever. See. Here's the thing: when we get Disney stuff and it's bad, it's like I just subconsciously go to the files in my brain, click delete, and then remove it from the recycle bin. So you just refreshed it and just put it back there. So screw you. That was horrible, by the way. Never watch that if you haven't already. Screw Disney for making that. So yeah, Jabba the Hutt dies, Boba Fett dies, then he comes back to life. Darth Vader dies, Emperor Palpatine dies, but then he comes back to life too.
Yeah.
So, with how many people come back to life in Episode 6, who knows? Darth Vader could be coming back any day now. I don't know if Disney's going to do that, but we'll see. They do lots of dumb things. Why not do another dumb one? Oh, Luke and Leia are siblings now, which means that their kiss in Episode 5 is now really, really weird.
Nice. All right. Thank you for that addition. Let's actually get into the content now.
Hey, you wanted something spicy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, there's the opening scene. It's a bit of a longer opening scene if you really add everything together, because a lot happens over a longish period of time. It reintroduces all the old characters. You got C-3PO, you got R2-D2, you've got Princess Leia, you've got Han Solo, you've got Luke Skywalker. All the same characters, new scene, right? Jabba the Hutt's lair, Mob Boss, etc., etc. How do you think they did reintroducing these characters that we've seen before and reestablishing why they're even fighting?
I'm going to be honest. I'm not a fan of the opening sequence of 6. I haven't given much thought to what I would want it to be like, but I just feel like at that point in time, I don't know that Lucas had plans to go and expand the universe as much as it had. I mean, they were popular, sure. 4 and 5 had done great, but to just add this whole sect of this criminal underworld, which is Jabba the Hutt and the Hutts and Tatooine and that whole part of Tatooine, it just felt very, very rushed because you didn't get to know any of those characters. The only character you have in that opening sequence is a bad guy that we already know of, is Boba Fett, and he gets offed in like 2 seconds.
Right.
Which, by the way, for how much they hyped him up, like, barring any other Star Wars knowledge, because at that point we didn't have any, Boba Fett's death was like so lame. It was Han Solo going, "What?
Did Boba he die Fett? Though? Whoops! Did he die though?" he should have died. We'll just say that.
He should have died.
I would rather have him died than that new show come out.
Just explain it away and say, sorry, we weren't good at choreographing fight scenes and CGI, and the way he died was actually really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they didn't know he was going to be that huge of a character either when they introduced him.
I mean, he was supposed to be a not like a main character, but he was supposed to be a very interesting side character, and he was also supposed hyped up to be really, really powerful or skilled.
That's true.
That's
true. He was the pinnacle of a bounty hunter, and especially as it goes on, it's supposed to be more and more so that. But yeah, the way that he died, the fact, I mean, I don't know. This might be going a little bit ahead, but just I think there is a certain sense and value to be had from a character dying in a way that isn't crazy epic by them making a miscalculation or doing something wrong. I think there is a sense in which that's not the worst thing to have in a movie, because at the end of the day, it shows that these are fallible characters, that they can just die. The fact that no one can die in Marvel movies without having a slow-mo scene where they gush out blood and look at their loved ones as they pass on is not realistic in some way. And I think that there is some value to be having someone just literally just die. So,
unless you're Black Panther.
So,
or Thor's mom.
Let's move on. I think that there is a lot to be said for the characters that are introduced just because we know them. And so the question is, how can we make this fresh? And they did that pretty well by adding that mob boss aspect with Jabba the Hutt and with the bounty hunters and all the stuff that's going on. Also, I think it is kind of a great intro to what we're going to be seeing throughout the rest of the movie. And that is, what does Luke stand for and what does Leia stand for, and all of them. And at the end of the day, Luke is coming back for his friends because he values them and he thinks that there's a sense in which that they can be redeemed from this situation, right? In the same way that he thinks that his father can be redeemed from the situation that he's in with the Emperor. So there is this sense in which this idea is presented right at the beginning, and he's so confident in that he's willing to put himself on the line for the sake of making sure and good on his promise of saving Han Solo and redeeming the characters that we have present in this story. I think in regards to an opener, it's a good way to reintroduce the characters in a new scene and also present that idea early on. Okay, cool. There is a little bit of development that goes on in there, but there comes a point where both Luke and Vader acknowledge that there's going to be a confrontation, right? Each in their own locations with their own discussions, right? And Vader with the Emperor, and then Luke with Yoda and Obi-Wan, and both of them acknowledge, I will have to face the other, and we will either resolve this, one of us will turn the other, or they will die. That is the solution. There is no other way to resolve this. This must be accomplished. And that's really where both of these characters come to a head, and everything then starts driving toward that. In regards to cementing the conflict, how do you think they did with that?
I like how they did it. I can never let go of the fact that George Lucas had Luke and Leia kiss, and then later on, it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, that's your sister. That's part of the conflict, though, is like, oh, you have a sister too, and he's just like, you see it in his face, like, oh crap, I've kissed her.
Oh my gosh, dude!
Can you just imagine the realization? Anyways, just think about that.
I'm not trying to think about that. I'm just, I mean, is it the best?
In the middle of talking about possibly the most important decision you're going to have to make in your life. You just found out the man you have to confront is your father, who was once a Jedi, and now he's leading the galactic empire that's enslaving the entire galaxy, and you have to confront him. And then this space wizard tells you, by the way, you made out with your sister once. And you're just like, why?
it's not the best. I don't
Imagine
know.
the interactions after that. Imagine when Leia finds out, when he tells her that she's his sister, that he's her brother. She's his sister. She's just like, oh.
I don't think that's a plot point. That's like a plot hole, but it is awkward. Yes. In regards to the actual point I wanted to make about the movie,
you asked how well they did cementing the conflict. That was part of it.
Yeah, well, okay, that's a whole nother level of conflict in a different area. I'm not.
No, because when he's fighting Darth Vader knows Princess Leia is his sister, and he uses that to upset him.
Well, yeah, but he doesn't talk about how they were smooching in the previous episode.
I feel like if Luke brought that up, Vader would probably get upset. Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, that's... Dude, I don't even know what to do with you right now.
Sorry.
No, it's just one of the things that's very great about the Star Wars movies, especially early on, is that they were very clear on the plot line and what was going on and where they were driving toward and what they were trying to do. And so, in regards to the plot itself, it's very clear what's going on, what needs to happen, what the goal is. It's not one of these convoluted stories that you look back on, you're like, what just happened? Which can be cool, but if you're not clear enough on what the goal is, that convolution can leave you scratching your head and confused instead of, wow, that was a great movie. You know, and at the end of the day, if you're looking at the plot saying, is this plot good? Part of that is having a clear goal they're trying to achieve, and they did that. So, you know, that's a point toward them. Is it an amazing, like, we are going to, you know, do this crazy thing? No, at the end of the day, if you've watched the previous two movies, you expect this to be the place they're going toward. So, you know, it's not that different from what you were expecting. It's just very clearly spelled out. Anyways,
I think you also need to keep in mind, like, people who are viewing this are coming at this with the last scenes they saw in episode 5 are Han Solo being frozen in carbonite, Luke Skywalker finding out that Vader's his dad, and then Lando and Chewie being on the Millennium Falcon going somewhere. So like, there's just, I think, thinking back, because I'm trying, when we're reviewing these movies specifically, I try to think back to the knowledge base that these people had and where they were coming at it from. And so the opening scene for 6, I think, does well in that it reintroduces everything from that major, like, cliffhanger, all multiple cliffhangers that were left in 5 that they're showing without telling. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Like, you know Han Solo's at Jabba's palace. You know that Vader's Luke's father. You know Luke is probably still being trained by Yoda, or you'd assume such. And so that they kind of they give you the information you need to connect the dots without connecting them for you.
You definitely always want to show, not tell, right? So that's the best way to do it. You don't want to over-explain. You could make the argument that there is some over-explanation that goes on here. So is it a bit much? Because especially because the beginning seems a little slow and a little... They spend a lot of time on Tatooine just to get Han Solo out of there. So in regards to actual screen time they spend there, it seems like a lot. Is that all necessary? Maybe not. I think you can make the argument that isn't. Was it interesting and entertaining as someone who's a fan of the Star Wars universe? I thought so. But if you want to nitpick at that, I think that there is some legitimacy there. Anyways,
like you were talking about, like, the middle stuff, like the meeting, the going to Endor, they have to take down the shield. It's also very convenient. They have those giant war rooms, and then they just explain their plan in detail for the audience as well. Oh, and then you get the Jar Jar Binks of the original trilogy, which is known as the Ewoks.
I mean, frankly, we might as well just talk about it now. They're just a poor plot point.
They definitely did not need to use the Ewoks at all. They had the whole, like, treehouse scenes, and then they were going to sacrifice Han Solo when they thought C-3PO was a god, and all that other crap, and just...
Like, before we get to that, technically, are they crap? Yes, but before... Or are you saying, like, before they save everyone? Them introduced as, like, the tribal characters who capture them when they first drop down. Whatever. I don't really care. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's great. But it is what it is, right? But then you have this whole thing they're trying to capture the bad guys. They're trying to destroy the shield and attack the second Death Star with the fleet that's outside. And Luke's captured at the new Death Star. All this is going on. Then you find out that Emperor Palpatine says, "I have an entire legion of my best troops down there to stop them." Right, and everyone down on Endor gets captured. Luke is captured. The entire fleet just hyperspaced right there, so they're ready to attack. And it turns out they're in a trap. Literally, the famous
"It's a trap."
It's a trap. Yeah. So it's the darkest moment for them, right? And what turns it around? A bunch of teddy bears. So that scene, when they build up to that, I think is really good. They go, okay, this is the bad situation. There's no hope, blah, blah, blah. And then the Ewoks are the solution. I'm not going to say it's a Deus Ex Machina, because it's not, because they had some development to it so that the teddy bears would end up coming and saving them. It seems ridiculous that an entire legion of the best troops of...
People were high when they made this movie.
Yeah, well, your most skilled soldiers should not lose to a teddy bear a third of your height who can barely
these
throw
teddy
a stick
bears,
at you.
Yes, they can't. They're not even agile. They can't even like when they walk around like toddlers. Like that's what their mobilities look like. Anyways, hear me out. I think it would be so much better if they had used Wookiees. It would have made more sense, and it would have. I think it would have created the conflict when they were captured by them a lot more believable too. Because
and you're saying
Luke
like this was just a native planet for Wookiees instead of for Ewoks?
You don't have to have it be a native planet for Wookiees. You could just say that when their planet was destroyed or run over by the Empire, which it was canonically, you just had Wookiees disperse across the galaxy, and there's just this like tribe of Wookiees hiding away here on Endor.
Yeah. So that's honestly also in the timeline, the Empire really doesn't stick around for that long.
Nope, it's only 24 years.
24 years is not a long time for an empire to reign across the galaxy. So,
well, that's the thing is like the empire is really just a different form of the Republic. The only difference is they became more invasive. They changed their armor, and instead of having like a group of people ruling, they had one guy. They operated the same. It was only after episode 6 that the Empire shatters and you get new factions who take over the remnants of the Empire. That's where you get Heir to the Empire. Honestly, the only thing good that came out of Star Wars Rebels was Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Can't speak to that, but I believe you. There's a lot that came out of that wasn't amazing. So we deal with the fallout. Man, maybe the Rebels are the bad guys all along because they just destroyed peace, justice, freedom, and security to someone's new empire.
If you think about it, if the Rebels never fought back, everything would be fine. If everyone just listened and did what they were told, everything would be fine.
Be quiet, sit down. Yeah.
Well, I got the sit down part, but quiet's not going to happen.
The climax leads up to Vader and Luke fighting, and this idea that Luke ends up rejecting the call to the dark side, and Vader actually turning back to the light side and throwing the Emperor down the shaft, right? In regards to a climactic scene, how do you think that they did?
You mean, well, because there's like 3 different climaxes happening at the same time. You have Vader on the Death Star, you have the ships in space, and you have the people on the Force Moon. Are you talking about all of it?
I mean, technically, yes, but most importantly, of all of the climaxes, we do want all of the quote-unquote good guys to win, but at the same time, the primary good guy that we're focused on, which is Luke Skywalker, his arc with Vader is probably the most paramount one. So of all the ones that get resolved, we want to see that one resolved most. So that's the biggest climax, but yes, the other ones are also important.
The whole climax on Endor, like that whole
climax.
The climax. I'm sorry. Like, Endor is just, because they added the Ewoks, I think it just ruins the climax. It's like
you think it ruins the climax. Interesting.
I think it goes from like, oh, everyone's about to die, because literally everyone's relying on Endor. That's what the deciding factor in the whole battle is. It's like a chain of events. Mm-hmm. Luke and the Emperor are kind of like, they're outside of this whole thing. They're doing their own thing, while the space battle in Endor, the space battle for it to commence relies on Endor. The other thing is the Death Star is still up there, still functioning. And so unless people in the spaceships can blow up the Death Star still functions. And even if Luke does kill the Emperor and Vader turns, they have to leave the Death Star. And you've got Praetorian Guards in there and everything. So that's not really, I mean, ultimately everything rests on Endor. The problem with Endor is they're building up all this tension, and then it turned into like a comedy, and it's just like raining teddy bears. Like, that's literally what it looks like in the first scene. It just looks like teddy bears start falling out of the trees onto the stormtroopers, and they're just like, oh, this heavy teddy bear just hit me in the head. Oh, sadness.
I don't know how you can defend the Ewoks, to be honest. There are people who say, oh, they have whatever their primitive ways of fighting back. Isn't it awesome? And oh, it could be justified in this way or that way. Like, at the end of the day, you can make up reasons for why the Ewoks succeeded against the stormtroopers. Yes,
a lot more of them should have died. They should have an Ewok slaughter, is what should have happened.
Well, yes, that's for sure. But
and then it would have given Luke, Han, and Leia, and the other rebels enough time to escape while they slaughtered all the teddy bears.
It should be a bloodbath for the Ewoks.
Here's the question, because ultimately, if you actually think about that episode and what happened on Endor, that ruins the rest of Star Wars. Because if that is the best the Empire has to offer, how are the rebels losing?
They offered a good pension plan when people signed up. It was just the numbers, pure numbers. Yeah, you can't think too deeply about it, in my opinion. All you have to do is acknowledge that the Ewok scene was quite bad. Doesn't make sense that they should have won, just looking at them realistically, considering the technology they had versus the primitive technology the Ewoks had, and give them a thumbs down for that point.
A massive thumbs down, by the way.
It's massive. In regards to the other 2 points, primarily the space scene, which is a reenactment of episode 4, but this time in a much less stable Death Star, and then the fight between Vader, Luke, and the Emperor. How do you think that they did?
I liked the fight between Luke and Vader. I think that was done well, and honestly, I think it was done well because that's where most of Lucas's attention was put.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think that was the pinnacle of his creation thus far. Like, he had so much in there that he was working on that he like, there were so many little things he did there. You have the whole tempting of Luke with the Emperor, where he wants him to turn. Luke isn't. And the thing that's interesting is he tempts him in a very similar way that he tempted Anakin, which he also mirrors that in episode 3. He's what he's doing is he's appealing to what he knows Luke wants to do, kind of. Like, strike me down, it's so easy, right. Save your friends. That's what it is. He's saying, he's offering him the opportunity to save someone he cares about by committing a certain act. But that certain act would result in him turning to the dark side, which is ultimately what Palpatine wants.
Right. And so that is interesting as a character, because I would say of all the characters in this movie, one of the most interesting is Emperor Palpatine, because 1, the way he demonstrates power in the throne room, and 2, because of his absolute commitment to the dark side, where he's like, you're pretty sure he's not going to die, right? But he's willing to go as far as put his life on the line for the sake of convincing Luke to become part of the dark side with him. Yeah. And that's a testament to his willingness to go that far, right? And how evil of a villain he is.
The other thing that's interesting about this fight is there's a lot of things. Like, people say things about like, oh, well, there was like parts where one person had the high ground. I think that's kind of funny. I don't really think Lucas intended that. One thing that I think is interesting, though, is when Luke goes to swing and kill Palpatine. Something that Lucas had been doing since episode 4 was trying to show Vader in his older age. It's been almost 20 years between 3 and 4. And so once he interacts with Luke and he realizes it's his son, you almost start to see this softening of Vader, but it's very slow and it's like very progressive as time goes on. And so there's little instances of it. And even Palpatine in 6 questions it. He says, "You can sense Luke, why can't I?" It's like, I feel like you're a little too emotionally invested in this. And Vader's constantly having to reassure the Emperor, no, don't worry. I'm committed to this. You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But even Luke hints at it. He's like, I know there's good in you. I'm not going to fight you, even in the fight when they're fighting. But before it all starts, when Luke goes to swing at Palpatine, Vader stops him. And a lot of people think that was Vader protecting Palpatine. But the way that it was written, what it was supposed to be is him protecting Luke from making that decision. Because that whole scene, if you notice, Vader, for the most part, is just watching, other than when they're fighting. But when Palpatine and Luke are interacting, I mean, Palpatine even, like, at one point when Vader and Luke are fighting, Palpatine tells them, "Kill him. You can become my new apprentice. He's old news. We don't need him anymore."
Right.
But it's like all of this time, Vader's had these doubts. And now when he's witnessing the interaction between Palpatine and his son, he's seeing so much of what Palpatine did to him, and he sees so much of himself in his son. And so he's starting to recognize what happened, and he's starting to empathize and sympathize with what's going on with his son. And he doesn't want his son to become him. And I think, because the thing is, 6 and 3 there's so much between the two movies that is almost intertwined, because there's a lot of mirroring there. And even in 3, you see the scene when you first see Anakin on Mustafar after killing the Trade Federation and the Separatist leaders.
Right.
You see him standing on that, like, walkway looking out, and like his eyes are just like streaming tears. And what that scene was supposed to like communicate, the point of that scene was to show this isn't what Anakin wanted. He never wanted this. There's still this great turmoil within Anakin Skywalker, and he's not yet fully committed to the character or persona of Darth Vader yet. Even though he's already gone through the temple, he's slaughtered the Jedi, it's like he's still having this inner conflict, and that was what that scene was supposed to show. Was like, this wasn't what he envisioned when he was that boy on Tatooine.
Right.
And so he hates himself. That's one of the things about Darth Vader is he hates who he is and what he's become. But it's almost like he's just like he's resigned to his fate. He sees no other way out. But he definitely doesn't want that for his son. And so that's even why he tried to convince Palpatine in 5 to freeze Luke and carbonite. He didn't want to kill his son. Well, what he wanted, and that's why you have the whole scene with Han Solo getting frozen in carbonite, is because the whole plot point there was he was going to test the carbon freezing process on another human being before he did it to Luke.
Well, yeah.
And so the fatherly protecting Vader has for Luke, even at the same time they're adversaries. And so you have that scene, you have them fighting later on, and then you finally have Luke when he's lying on the ground being electrocuted to death by Palpatine. And you have what I think is really interesting, and Lucas mirrored this too in episode 3, is this is the exact same choice that Anakin was given right before he cut off Mace Windu's hand. Except the roles are reversed. You have the lightning, you have the electrocuting, you have one person asking for his help. One's the good guy, one's the bad guy. But the last time he was given this decision, he made the wrong choice. But in 6, he makes the right choice, and he takes the same person that was on the ground asking for his help last time, tosses him down the ventilator shaft. And it's like, it was that, because the mirroring there was supposed to definitively show that was his redemption right there, when he was placed with the almost exact same decision. The difference is now it's his son instead of a different random Jedi master. And it's his redeeming moment, because he's given that same scenario, and he's able to remake that, almost like, it's not like he's going back, but it's almost like he's represented with it, and he gets to give a new answer. If you want to put it that way.
Interesting. I think I like a lot of what you just said, and I think especially the mirroring between episode 6 and episode 3 is great. I've never thought of that before. Haven't really introduced with that. that being said, the overflowing love for his son is a nice sentiment, but to kind of push back on that, you have this idea that yes, he was saving his son from killing the Emperor in episode 6, right? Why then would he go out and fight his son and try to engage him in mortal combat and then ask him to turn to the dark side again?
You mean in 5?
No, I'm talking about in this movie.
In 6.
In episode 6. Yeah, but also in 5. If he's really like, oh, let's just freeze him, I don't actually want to give him up to the Emperor, why then would he say, join me and do the exact same thing I did, which is turn to the dark side?
There's still because here's the thing, Vader is still, there's still a sense in which Vader is very much a slave to his wants and desires, if you will. He's very much just he's the perfect example of a fallen hero. There's a part of him that's still pushing back, and that part is Anakin Skywalker, that hero that was always there. And then there's also Darth Vader. And so, Vader in so many ways, and I don't want to sound like a stoic kid giving their APOL speech, but he represents a fallen human being. He can't save himself. Okay? That's the point. Yeah. And that's why when you were asking me, what is Luke Skywalker in this one, I said, I'm just going to say he's Jesus.
Okay.
All joking aside, though, that's what's so interesting about Vader's character is because he made the decision to give in to his impulses. And as a result, he became a slave to those impulses. And he's now a slave to Palpatine. Because he fell, because he became Darth Vader, his suit and his cybernetics and all of the injuries he endured made it so that he was incapable of defeating Palpatine. And Palpatine wanted that. That was his plan all along. He knew Anakin was more powerful than him in his human form. And he needed him to be in a weaker state, but he knew even in his weaker state, he'd still be a very powerful foe for anyone he wanted to destroy. And so you have that aspect, but you also have Vader's still a very conflicted character. He doesn't really know what he wants, even in 5. Even in 3, he expresses to Padme that he's just going to overthrow the Emperor once all this chaos settles down. That's his plan. And then he gets beat up by Obi-Wan, and he can't do that anymore. And then they later explore that in comics and legends and stuff. There's different instances where Vader tries to rebel against Palpatine, but he can't. There's attempts, and Palpatine shuts them down. And so I'm pretty sure what they were going for was there's a part of Vader that still embraces the darkness. He wants the sun at his side, but at the same time he wants to throw off the shackles of the Emperor, this oppressor that he has, but he still wants the darkness and he still wants the power. And so between 5 and 6, and even in 6, you have him still fighting Luke. And I'm honestly not sure what to say about that part. I think it still goes back to the conflict. He's still conflicted as a character, and he hasn't yet been presented with the choice. And you can even see it when his son is getting electrocuted and is calling out for help from his dad. Vader is still standing over him, just watching it unfold. And it's you can see him just his life flashing before his eyes, and he's just questioning what he should do here. And I guarantee you, again, it's a movie, so you can't really know, but I think it'd be very believable to say he's envisioning, he's seeing himself in episode 3, watching Mace Windu and Palpatine, and he's looking at it going what have I done? Because that's exactly what he asked after he made his decision in the 3rd movie. He's right. What should I do? What have I done? What is going to be left of me? What is going to be remembered? What am I leaving? What is my legacy? I don't know what questions were going through his mind, but I'm sure he was questioning everything.
Right. Well, for a character with very few words overall in the movies, that he definitely has a lot of character arc that he goes through. And also, you don't even see his face, so it's hard to tell what emotions are playing across his face. But
which is what makes him so cool.
In case you couldn't tell, okay? Andrew is a fan of Darth Vader.
I even have an Anakin minifigure right here.
Yeah. See, so I think some of those explanations do make sense of the character. So how do I put this? So Anakin Skywalker as a character, and some of this is going to go back to what we discussed when we review those movies, right? Hopefully you're there for that, Andrew. Maybe not. We never know. We'll see. Continue watching. But view of Anakin as a character from these previous movies, 4, 5, and 6, is someone who is completely subservient to the dark side and to Emperor Palpatine, right? And if you look at the previous movies, I think there is some explanation for that. Primarily, my impression watching those previous movies, which we'll have to review when we go there, but is this idea that this person was constantly fighting for things that he couldn't have and was constantly being rejected in a society that was raising him, right? So in the Jedi Order, while he wants to be a Jedi, he also wants to get married. He wants to be a Jedi Master. He wants to be, doing things that he's not allowed to do and is being forbidden from, to betray these people that he's trusted and are his friends, right? Things like that. So he had a lot of lack of trust for the good because he had faced so many obstacles in that situation. Whereas in the dark side, he's presented with this opportunity to do whatever you want, more or less, as long as you obey me, right? You have free reign as long as you obey the emperor. And so, in regards to that, there is some level of insurmountable freedom underneath a giant boot. And that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that in episode 3, Anakin is broken. He goes from he's underneath all this stress, and when he breaks and joins the dark side, his pendulum swings all the way over and gets stuck there. And it's almost as if he's given up on fighting for the good guys or for the light side. He's acknowledged he has become a monster, and he just acknowledges that and embraces that and just lives that life. And so that goes from him and I think that transformation doesn't just start or isn't completed in the single instance with Mace Windu, Emperor Palpatine, and Anakin. I think it's fully completed with the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin. But anyways.
Yeah, no, that's where it starts. That's like where
right.
It's like the beginning of the end for him.
Right. And so once he hits that full level, and you see this even in the Obi-Wan series, right? He's so convinced that he is so given in to this new identity that he's completely given himself over to the dark way of life, that he has told himself that the old version of him is dead. This new version of him is Vader. And so when he's in this situation, he has more or less psychologically programmed himself to always obey the master, And I think there is some level of us as people, maybe not to the same degree of Darth Vader, but to the degree of we feel like when we give up on some sort of dream or goals in life, we can just go through the motions and do the things that we have acknowledged is the way we live our lives. And so I think there's some degree of Vader doing that in this situation, that he obeys the master no matter what, because that is what he does. He is Darth Vader. He is not Anakin Skywalker. And so this is the whole struggle with him internally, is Luke trying to bring back the old version of Anakin, the virtuous version of Anakin Skywalker, and he is fighting against that internally. He wants that because he knows that's the better version of him. But at the end of the day, he's lived as Darth Vader for 25 years, and that is his life. That is who he is. And to give that up is such a hard struggle for him internally. And so that's why he says to him, right, when they're on Endor, it's too late for me, right? And when he's at the throne room, which is why I think it makes sense to take the impression that he was defending the Emperor, because at the end of the day, that's what he's trained to do. And the Emperor knew he would do it, which is why he never drew a sword.
I suppose. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the best explanation for any of it is just he was so conflicted at that point.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Because if you want to put it in the terms of like Anakin and Vader are two separate people almost, fighting for control of the same body. At that point, Anakin had resurfaced. There were like little, it was like there were cracks in Vader's armor, and Anakin was able to shine through in certain instances.
Mm-hmm.
And so Anakin was still shining through even when Vader said, "I am your father, like join me." Like that was for Vader, that was soft. And granted, when it comes to like his family,
well, he had
Vader
made that promise to previous people in his family. You know, that's just how he works.
Yeah, he did it to Padme.
It's always a rule of the galaxy option. Just buy into the family business.
Yeah. I mean, all that to say, this whole conversation, I still really do enjoy the fight between Vader and Luke, and then Palpatine. Like, you can totally tell Palpatine is like that. He's very calm and collected, but when he realized Luke isn't going to buy into this dark side crap, he's like, okay, screw you, you little kid. And then
exactly.
he like loses it. What else is interesting is that like they've alluded to it in the comics a little bit, and it's in the movie you can't really tell that all this stuff is going on or that Lucas intended this stuff. Like Palpatine still, in a sense, has a hold over Vader. He exercises a level of control over Vader's will and over Vader's being as an individual because he's been so weakened after his interaction with Obi-Wan on Mustafar. I mean, he even.
You mean like physically?
No, like mentally too. So physically, yes, he absolutely does. Like the suit he gave him is actually like it in terms of like efficiency and what's best for Vader. It was a horrible choice. It's outdated equipment. It's heavy. It's bulky. It inhibits his movement, and it's also extremely susceptible to Force lightning, which means Palpatine. It's much easier for him to subdue Vader if he wants to. Like, he just has to zap him. Like, you take an EMP to Vader's suit and Vader's knocked out. Why are you smiling?
Nerd. That's just straight nerd facts right there. I keep going.
Yeah, it is. Anyways. Now I'm trying to remember what my point was. That's what it was. Okay. So he has a hold over Vader. And you can see that, and like Vader like respects and honors him, and no matter how you want to look at it, Vader, Palpatine's focus shifts so dramatically from Vader to Luke in that scene where he loses his cool. He gets angry at Luke. He gets so angry he gets out of his chair. And he starts like using Force lightning to subdue Luke and to like basically kill him. He's so used to Vader just standing by and watching and just like not doing anything that he's not even thinking about what Vader's doing. You can totally tell all of his focus is on Luke. Matter of fact, actually, never mind. I'm not going to compare it to 8 because that's stupid. But it's like he's
that was a close one.
Yeah, it was. Oh, if I ever do that, I need you to like mute me immediately.
Oh gosh.
But he stops paying attention to Vader, and I think that's what gives Vader the upper hand, where he can literally just pick up Palpatine and chuck him.
No, I agree. It really does play well into just the overconfidence that Palpatine has. So regardless of where we think a masked man was emotionally in this final scene, it does terminate well, right? The climax does have the resolution of Vader's arc, Luke's arc, and everything comes together how it's supposed to and completes the movie. So it's quite good in regards to resolution and completes the entire 6 movies and the Star Wars universe as it ought to be. So, it's a great conclusion to the movie. Do you have a favorite character, a least favorite characters that pissed you off?
Do Ewoks count?
Ewoks do count because that's what I would say.
Yeah, they pissed me off. Also, maybe it's just me, but I don't like Princess Leia. She's just an annoying character.
Like, she's the precursor to the take charge woman. Come on.
Still annoying. That's my point exactly.
That's funny. I don't really have a problem with her, but that's okay. Each person has their own problems with characters or what pisses them off. The Ewoks are bad. The Ewoks are bad. Facts.
The reason I don't like Princess Leia is because her character doesn't develop. Like Luke and Han develop. You can see their development. To me, Princess Leia is still other than like 4, where she's upset with Han. She goes from being the snobby princess to, oh, I love you, so I'm not going to be snobby to you anymore. But she's still snobby. You can see instances where it comes through. I mean, look, pretty much the only arc that I really know of with Leia is I fell in love with Han Solo.
I think she's a lot more cold, maybe, than she was previously. Yeah, she doesn't have a huge story arc, but I don't think she needs to. Like, she's a side character. She's not.
She wasn't supposed to be. She was supposed to be Deke Starkiller.
Okay, let's not go there.
Let me just explain this really quick.
No,
so Princess Leia was supposed to be a boy, all right? The opening scene for episode 4 was supposed to be a fight scene between Darth Vader and Deke Starkiller, who was supposed to be a legendary Jedi. Stop doing that. It's painful, okay? Just appreciate me. Anyways, but then the people funding Lucas for episode 4 were like, no, that's dumb. We want a girl character because there's no girls in this movie. He's like, well, we have Aunt Beru, but she dies. And so they said, no, we need a girl. So he made Luke a girl. Then he's like, no, that's dumb. That doesn't make any sense. A girl farmer? No. We'll make Deke Starkiller a girl, but that kind of sucks, which means we can't have the lightsaber duel. So sadness. And so we got Princess Leia. So they scrapped the whole character of Deke Starkiller, which was supposed to end up being Skywalker. They used the name later to be Darth Vader's apprentice in the video game Force Unleashed and Force Unleashed 2. I think that would have been so much cooler, but, you know. So what? What could have been?
Are we dead?
They have... Sure.
I can neither confirm nor deny any of those points. That was a straight nerddom right there. I don't know. What could have, what should have. I think Princess Leia was a fine character. It's whatever. Personally, one of my favorite characters is Darth Vader. I think that his arc, especially at that point, is great. I don't know that I loved everything about this movie, but that being said, the stuff between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader is great, and especially the story arc that gets completed in here with Darth Vader is so good. And so for that reason, I really liked him. A close second, though, honestly, is the Emperor, just because the way they present the Emperor in this movie is amazing. He is such a formidable foe that he doesn't lift a finger for 90% of the movie. He's literally just sitting in a chair saying, I orchestrated this all out and you all are going to die. And even if you guys fight back and do get some one-ups on me, at the end of the day, Luke, you're either going to join me or die. And that's how it's going to be. Right. And his absolute confidence and the fact that he can follow through on most of that shows him to be a formidable enemy. So he's a great character as well. I think we've overanalyzed Darth Vader to a pulp at this point, so I'm not going to go into why he's an amazing character, but he's an amazing character. And yeah, that's me.
Are you waiting to hear what my favorite character is right now?
Oh, I know what your favorite character is, but go ahead.
Take a guess.
I think it's probably Chewbacca.
Screw you. It's Darth Vader.
Yes.
I'd say Luke comes in second, though. Not them.
Okay.
I think Luke's character, there's so many interesting things about him and how much... Because, I mean, for someone who watches it 1 to 6, you're going to be saying this movie mirrors 3. In reality, 3 mirrors 6, but vice versa. Something that's interesting is Anakin in 1, 2, and 3 starts out with very light-colored clothes. So actually, in episode 1, it's the same color as Luke's clothes in episode 4.
Right.
Then you get episode 2, and you have Luke with a darker shade of clothing. It's like it's like a darker brown. In episode 5, you get that. Episode 2, Anakin again, darker clothing. Then in episode 6 and 3, they both have like black clothing. Okay. And Anakin is actually unconventional for a Jedi to have darker clothing. It's supposed to be lighter like Obi-Wan. And so what happened in 6 is they gave Luke actual black Jedi robes, which is, again, very unconventional. But it was supposed to symbolize that he was coming closer and closer to that pivotal moment where he's going to have to choose between the light and the dark. What happens, though, is there's a scene where Luke has a flap on his shirt fall down. You know what I'm talking about? It's white on the inside.
No, so I do not recall in 6,
when he's fighting Vader, his like clothing, like something happens and he's like getting beat up and a piece comes loose and you realize underneath that is white. What that was supposed to symbolize, according to Lucas, was he wasn't turning to the dark side like his father had. So there's also that mirroring between him and Anakin. You also see at the beginning of 6, as opposed to the beginning of 3, you have Anakin, who was growing into his power. He loses his hand, just like Luke did. You see him because he's overconfident. Luke is overconfident 2 and 5. And they both get humbled by that experience. They realize, oh, we're not actually as strong as we thought we were. But in 6 and 3, it opens up with a demonstration of their power. You realize that they've come a long way from the last movie, and they've learned a lot, not just humility, although Anakin could probably still use a lot of that. But they've learned they're not as powerful as they thought they were, but they've also learned a lot more than that along the way. And so you see that with Luke in episode 6. I mean, there's little instances where he does things that are pretty impressive feats, even if the graphics and the choreography wasn't amazing. You have him constructing his final lightsaber, which Anakin did in 3 as well. They both lost their lightsaber in 2. They both get a new one in 3 and 6. He has that final confrontation. He has to make the decision to leave and go and do that. Anakin did the same thing in 3 when he left the Jedi Temple. Luke does it when he leaves Endor. The difference is the outcome of that situation. But when you look at all of the things that happened, I don't want to say it's like 7, because 7 copied 4, but in a bad way. But it's like a copy, but in a different way. They both go through these very similar character development arcs, where like both Luke and Anakin wanted to leave at the beginning of 1. Anakin wanted to leave to become a Jedi. Luke wants to leave to join the rebellion and become a pilot. And so they both have these very similar arcs, which was purposeful. But the difference is Luke finishes his arc in a way that it was meant to be finished, and he ends up coming out on top at the end. And in the process, he ends up redeeming his father, who went through the almost exact same arc, but failed. And so he's like that. Yeah. He redeems even his father's arc, because he helps it, like, because Vader's arc's still going technically, but he helps resolve it in the end. So he resolves both of their arcs.
Well, you could argue that Luke's arc keeps going past episode 6 as well, if you really think about it. No, it doesn't. Yeah. No, that's a great analysis. I think that's gives good merit to Luke's character and makes him even more remarkable as a character if you draw that comparison. There is a lot of value, is what the word I'm looking for, that goes into this series, specifically because of how long it's stuck in the cultural phenomena, right? The fact that people like you are huge fans of this, even though movies like this one have come out years and years ago, is a testament to this series. What do you think that this movie specifically did that contributed to society or cinema that still sticks around today?
I'm not entirely sure, because I wasn't alive when it came out. Not that old. I don't think it's an understatement to say that Star Wars is more of a household name than, say, like Star Trek. Right. Sure, Star Trek is popular, but it was like in a TV show form. You had to be a really, really big nerd at the time to be invested in it. Then I think what Star Wars did is it took something like Star Trek, it put it into movie form, made it attractive to pretty much anybody to come and just watch it. And what it made science fiction movies, like space travel, all that, and it packaged it in a way that made it appealing to the public. And so we got so much out of that. I mean, Star Trek is, I think it's not an understatement to say it's more popular now than it was then. I don't know how heavily it impacted like Marvel and DC, but I think those would still fall in the camp of science fiction. You have space travel in those, and it took a lot of that. I mean, it even impacted the space race. You have the Star Wars program, which was dubbed because of these movies, and what it did was it caught people's ear because they knew what Star Wars was. So when you give something a name like that, everyone's like, oh, we can get behind this. We like that name. We want to look into this. So I think it had a lot of cultural relevance then. It definitely has some now. Unfortunately, Disney's kind of trashing it and ruining its memory, and makes me want to go do things I'm not going to say on this podcast. But
nice. Yeah. No, I think I agree, and even some of those points, like the program you just mentioned, are huge to the testament of it. I mean, the show as a whole has really added a lot, not just to individual families' enjoyment, but also to the science fiction world as a whole. The idea of having, laser swords or some form of that is something that I've seen hard to get away from for a lot of people in the sci-fi world without, literally just riffing off of Star Wars and saying, "Oh, we have lightsabers" or something like that. There was a lot of things sci-fi wise that they really added, which were hugely valuable. Also, just
Yeah.
beyond that, 6 specifically is part of the reason that the whole series exists today. Why? Because it actually terminated the series well. So they had a good conclusion to all of this they had built up to from 4 and 5, and they add to in 1, 2, and 3. Right. And so that whole arc of 6 movies, or 3 movies, if you've only watched the first New Hope, Return of the Jedi, and Revenge of the Sith. Sorry, not Revenge of the Sith.
Empire Strikes Back.
Empire Strikes Back. Yeah. So if you've only watched those 3, it still has a cohesive arc that ends in a well-established value that these people can be redeemed and can come back. And so they have values that are timeless, that stick with us beyond the movies itself, and also speaks to us as individuals, right? And so these stories hold that value, and then also added all this cool sci-fi stuff that had never been seen before and really has impacted people's imagination in ways that hadn't been done previously, that have now been carried forward into future sci-fi developed storylines.
Yeah.
So yeah, it adds a lot, and it's because they did it well at the end that it still sticks around today. How'd you rate this one on a scale of 1 to 10? What would you give this?
I'm gonna be honest. When you ask me that question, I always wish I could go back and have a list of the movies I've already listed and ranked to make it so much easier to sound consistent.
Yeah, you'll have to start making a tally, my guy.
I'll have to go back and listen to all our podcasts.
I'm gonna start having a spreadsheet over here. This is what Andrew rated this before.
I don't know. I'd say if you're gonna give it a 7, that means you'd watch it again. I think a 7.5 to an 8 means you like watching it again.
Okay.
That's
a weird way to put it.
A 7 is like, oh, I enjoyed that movie. I'd watch it again. Like if someone wanted to watch it, I'd watch it again. 7.5 or above is like, I would be the one to recommend we'd watch it again.
Okay.
Like I'd go out of my way to be the one to turn that on.
Okay.
Over a 7 is like, if someone wanted to watch it, I'd go along with it. Like, oh yeah, we can watch that movie.
Okay.
I think I'd give 6 probably a 7.8, 7.9.
There you go.
I think it's definitely up there with in my book, it's a good Star Wars movie. I don't think any of the 3 original movies are movies I wouldn't enjoy watching over again.
Makes sense considering how big of a fan you are. So,
okay, but I don't necessarily enjoy watching 1 over again.
Interesting.
Even 2. 2 has its moments, but
that'll be interesting.
Definitely not 7, 8, or 9.
Interesting. I would give 6 a 7.1. So I do enjoy watching it over again. I think I probably wouldn't suggest it myself. The arc is great. The arc for the whole series, you can't complete the story without without 6. So 6 is critical. There are things in it like the Ewoks that just stick in my mind like an eyesore and make me really wish that wasn't existing at all. So, and then the beginning is pretty slow. There's nothing against it specifically that goes, oh, other than the Ewoks, that makes it go, oh, this is a crap movie. But 7.1 puts it at a point where it's enjoyable. I would enjoy it again. I do enjoy it again, but there's nothing about it that makes it stand out from the other ones. And by itself, would it be an amazing movie? Probably not. So if as a cohesive piece to the overarching arc, it's an 8 or above, right? Because it adds to that cohesive arc. But as a standalone movie, I'd give it a 7.1.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's all we got for today. We hope you all enjoyed, and yeah, that's it. That's the pod. We'll see you next time.
If you have a movie you want reviewed or have some feedback to give us, send us a message at alostplot.com. If you like this podcast, please leave us a review. It really helps other people find our podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and look forward to seeing you back with us next time. See you then.